All right, welcome back to the 2086 NBA playoff, folks. We are in the second round, the Eastern Conference Semifinals. We are live at the whatever United Center. We're live at the United Center with the Chicago Bulls hosting the Toronto Raptors. The Chicago Bulls are only the 6th seed, and they took a wild upset in a very closely contested series against the Orlando Magic in the first round. A very closely contested 7-game series where Chicago just barely edged out Orlando with their playoff experience and their superstar pedigree. Orlando didn't really have much in their star power necessarily. They had more of a cohesive unit. But in the playoffs sometimes the star power machines. And so here they are. They find themselves looking like they're going up 2-0 versus the Toronto Raptors, who are the 7th seed in their own right. So we have two lower seeds advancing in the first round versus their higher seed opponent to face here in the second round. The Raptors have knocked off they are the 7th seed, so they knocked out the 2nd seed Boston Celtics, who they're a pretty young team. This Raptors team has a little bit more experience in the playoffs and stuff like that. They remember this was the team that had upset the Louisville Liberty back in 2083, coming off their 4-peat. So they were the team that stopped the Liberty's 4-peat. So they still have kept a large part of their rotation alive just because of that run. Because in their mind, if we can beat the Louisville Liberty, then we can beat anybody. Then we really don't need to change very much, even though they perennially end up in the 6th to 8th seeds year after year. They still haven't changed a whole bunch when it comes to this team because, like I said, because they feel like there's not much change. It's very hard to make changes when you know you have that type of ceiling, when you can knock off a 4-time championship dynasty, even with the injuries and stuff that they had. So they're looking at this team, man, and they're like, look, we're just going to keep going. And it worked again. Again, like I said, they upset the Boston Celtics first round, and so here they are in the second round trying to do the same thing, trying to make their first conference finals appearance as a core. And the Raptors haven't been in the conference finals in years and years. It's been a very long time. Probably over 20 years, I'd say. They were a dynasty back in the late 60s or early 60s, one of them. Back in the 60s, they were a dynasty, and but nowadays, they're trying to get back to that. And Chicago is up right now, man. They're up 13 points with 2 seconds to go in the fourth, and that is a wrap, folks. That is a wrap. Chicago Bulls take a 2-0 series lead against the Toronto Raptors. They took care of business at home. They had 2 home games. They took care of business, and now they're gonna head to Toronto. They're gonna head to Canada. They're gonna have to get their passports. But they're going to head to Canada, and they're going to try to see if they can knock off this team in 4 or 5 games, honestly, because they feel really good right now. But the Toronto Raptors, I have a feeling they're not done, even though they're down 2-0. That doesn't mean anything in the NBA landscape. You can easily come back into a deficit, especially if you have 2 home games coming up. So I'm not super worried about this team. Neither one of these teams, both these teams have their flaws, honestly, but they're both pretty good, honestly. They both have their flaws, and they both have their strengths. So we will see. This is a very interesting matchup, and I wanted to get into the backstories of these teams. I'm going to go ahead and talk about the Bulls today because they won, and then the next episode of this series, this specific series, I'm going to go over the Raptors, just so this episode isn't like 5 hours long. But let me see. Let me look at their lineup real quick. So if we come here, we start off with Alonzo Bosh. Now this guy, the starting point guard, man, oh man, like this is so much, bro. Where do I even start? So he was the 21st pick back in 2070, as you can see. He's only 6'2", and he has the Hall of Fame work ethic badge. This dude is a grinder. This dude is a self-made, all-star, all-NBA type of guy. He's only 6'2", nothing really special about him physically, but this guy's an 11-time All-Star, 2-time All-NBA, 1-time champion back in 2073. He won a championship in his 3rd year in the league when he averaged 29 points a game. He came out the gate in 2007, averaging 7 points, and then the next year he averaged 6 points. And then the next year he averaged 29 points. So that was a huge, I think he won Most Improved as well. Yes, he did. Yep, he won Most Improved Player and a championship in the same year, 2073. Only his 3rd year in the league. That was the year that they acquired, he was in Cleveland, so that was the year that they acquired Gregory Jefferson from the Lakers. And so they brought in Gregory Jefferson, who is a legend in this league. He is a 3-time champion, 3-time MVP. He was an all-time scoring leader until Juan Carlos Chavez ended up taking that crown from him, and he's a legend of this game. And so basically, they get Jefferson, and he makes them a championship contender, and they win that first year. They don't win anytime after that, and he stayed in Cleveland for all these years. Look at all these years: 29-10, 28-10, 27-10. Like this dude was just going crazy, absolutely insane. He's just a bona fide hooper, a bona fide 28-10 every single year, super consistent. And then the Cavs were up and down. They were never bad during this stretch, but they were never championship contenders after that first stint with Gregory Jefferson. They ended up trading him away. And then they had a couple runs here and there. They had a conference finals run, and I think in the early 80s, they had put some little team together, including Bosh, and they made a conference finals run as like the 8th seed, but that was short-lived. That didn't really lead to anything. They ended up trading Bosh to Chicago for Tim Taylor and a bunch of other picks. Tim Taylor was a Chicago Bull at first, and he was the point guard and he's a lot younger than Bosh, but he just was not playing up to par in the playoffs consistently. Like every year he was messing up. And so they're like, yo, we got to trade him for a more established player, a player with championship experience. And here you are, baby, Alonzo Bosh, right for the picking. So they picked him up, and he's been solid ever since. He's about 36 right now. He's a little bit. I mean, he's taken like ever so slightly a dip in production. Not production, but maybe in athleticism. He's still extremely productive. Still extremely high level player. But there is ever so slightly a dip in his athleticism and physicality. But we move on to the second, the two-man, Howard Baxter, 6th pick overall back in 2075. He's 6'6" shooting guard. Howard Baxter, man, this dude is, again, another consistent scorer for Portland. He was in Portland for many years. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What is that? 6, 7, 8, 9. He was there for 8 or 9 seasons, and then he was shipped to San Antonio for a couple years. He played there with Henry Gilbert and Dale Hickson and all that, and then he gets shipped to Chicago this past trade deadline because Chicago, they needed a 2-guard to place alongside their big 3, I should say. Because this guy right here, the small forward, Anderson Moncrief, 6'9", 250 pounds. This dude was a beast. This dude from Alabama. He was the first overall pick, and he was actually a little bit of a reach. A little bit. Like, he had all the physical tools, and he had, like, the skill set, but they didn't know if he would exactly pan out, but they took the chance, and he panned out, man. This dude, and I ain't gonna lie, they have been to the conference finals several times, and they had lost several times in the conference finals to the Louisville Liberty. That is a big storyline of this franchise in the past 10 years. They had made the conference finals as a young squad. They first entered the playoffs back in 2079 as their first playoff experience with Anderson Moncrief here, his rookie year. They get knocked out by Louisville Liberty. They lost 4-0. Like, they literally got swept, got smoked, got that ass tapped, right? And then the next year, they come back as the 2 seed. They're the 2 seed next year, so huge jump. Anderson Moncrief was hooping. They have this guy right here, Shannon Ellis, who was the 3rd overall pick back in 2077. And so they had a really nice little rebuild. I forget what year Tim Taylor was drafted, but I think it was either 74 or 73. And so they had Tim Taylor, who was the point guard, and then they drafted this guy right here, Quinn, and in 2076, who was their center, to be the franchise center. They drafted Shannon Ellis in 2077 as a 3rd pick, and then they drafted Anderson Moncrief in 78 as the 1st pick. And so, like, back-to-back drafts, they established their front line for the future. And so now they had their little lineup or whatever back in 2079. That was like the first year. They get knocked out by Liberty, and then in 2080 they get knocked out by the Brooklyn Nets, even though they were the 7th seed. And so the Nets were the 7th seed, and they beat the 2 seed Chicago Bulls. And they were very, very young. They were still extremely young to be having such a high seed like that anyway. And the Brooklyn Nets were a lot more experienced, despite being such a low seed. They had been in conference finals runs and stuff like that. And so they ended up beating on, this young team in a technical upset, but a reasonable one. And then in 2081, they made the 3rd seed, so still very good. They beat Washington in the first round, their first playoff series victory. They beat Washington in 5 games, and then after that, they beat New York, who was the 2nd seed and a lot more experience than them, in 5 games. So this was a very, very big turning point. They're like, oh shoot, we're in the conference finals, and this is only like a couple years into our rebuild. But who do they face off against? Yep, you guessed it, the Louisville Liberty. They beat them 4-2. They lose to Liberty in 6 games in the conference finals. And so that was a heartbreaker. But again, that was as much of a heartbreaker as like, holy shit, we're in the conference finals. We're against the best team of this generation. So we're probably gonna lose, but we're here. And they knocked off 2 games from them. So that was big. So the next year, 2081, they made the conference finals again. They beat Orlando first round, and then they beat New York in the second round, who was the 1 seed that year. So that was a big upset. They beat them in 7 games in the second round. And so they reached the conference finals for the 2nd time in a row against who else? The Louisville Liberty. And they proceed to lose again in 6 games as the Louisville Liberty went on to win their 4th championship in a row. This is 2082. And so, this is now the 3rd time that they've been eliminated by the Liberty, 2nd time in a row. And so that was a really big thing. Like, holy shit, we cannot get past this team. And then in 2083, their biggest blunder, in my opinion, and really the reason that they may blow it up soon if they don't win. If they don't do anything this season, if they lose to Raptors or Liberty or some shit in the conference finals once again, if that happens, bro, they might just blow it up because this team is getting a little bit older. They knew that they were making that trade. They knew that they were making that, that gamble. They know they were taking a gamble with trading for Bosh because he's a lot older than Tim Taylor, who was their former point guard. And so that kind of limits their window a little bit, but they figured it was worth it. But that came later anyway. But back to the story. They didn't beat. They entered the 2083 season as the 3rd seed, so they were very good. Let's look at their win percentage that year. They won 60 games in 2083. And yes, they were only the 3rd seed. That just shows you how good the Eastern Conference was back at the time. But they won 60 games and they were the 3rd seed, right? They ended up losing to the Milwaukee Bucks, who only won 45 games, and they were the 6th seed. They lost to the Milwaukee Bucks. And get this, they lost in 5 games. 5 games. They were knocked off, sent home, packed up, and shipped off to Cancun. Like that was very, very it was very disheartening for Bulls fans. It was very just pathetic looking. Like it really just left a sour taste in the mouth. And that was actually the big reason why they shipped off Tim Taylor that offseason. If we go to, what team is he on now? The Kings? I think he's on the Kings right now. Yes, he is. If we look right here, Chicago, yes, see, I told you. He was drafted in 2075, actually. So he was there all this time. Look at these numbers. Like, he's putting up pretty good numbers. 25 and 10, 27 and 12. Like, these were very good numbers. But when he got to the playoffs, he was ass. And then he ended up, wait, what the fudge? Yeah, he ended up getting benched in the 2083 season for somebody else. And then when they got to the playoffs, he got his starting spot back, and he absolutely choked it away. He was very, very bad. He got clamped up. He got clamped up by Barney King. Barney King whooped that ass. Look at him. Barney King whooped that ass that series, and that was just very unfortunate. So they go home, they do a lot of soul searching, but they don't blow it up. They just end up trading Tim Taylor for Alonzo Bosh. That was their move. They said, okay, we're right there. We won 60 games. We just need a better point guard. So that's why they have Alonzo Bosh right now. And so the next year, 2084, they came back and they were the third seed once again. So this is like the third seed in a row. So they were a consistently very good regular season team. And they won 54 games. They're the third seed, and they lose. First round against the Indiana Pacers, who were the sixth seed. So this is like their third playoff series, not in a row, but the third playoff series in general that they have been upset by a lower seed. So this really caused some questions for the Bulls front office and the Bulls players. Like, what is going on here? And not only that, but mind you, Anderson Moncrief had some fantastic games against the Louisville Liberty, which is why they were so confident building around this team. Because he had like 40 point performances against the Liberty and stuff. Like, he was going absolutely crazy. He had one playoff run in the early 80s where he was averaging like 39 points a game or something. And so everybody thought that this guy was going to be the next, like MJ. He's on the Bulls. Like, they thought that he was going to be the next great player. And I can't say that he's not a great player, but he hasn't ascended like that in every single playoff run. Sometimes he plays a little bit down. Sometimes he plays up. So it's a little bit interesting, but either way, it was a very tumultuous period for Bulls fans during this time. Very up and down emotionally, up and down roller coaster emotions, and then so now that leads us to 2085, where they were the 4 seed and they beat Orlando in the first round, who were the 5 seed, and then they match up once again with the Louisville Liberty in the second round, and they lost this time in 5 games. And so, it was just this team just really, really unfortunate. Because any other era, this Bulls team makes hella finals appearances, probably a couple championships. But because they were in the Eastern Conference with the Louisville Liberty, who just so happened to be the most dominant team of all fucking time, they had no finals appearances up to this point. And we'll see what happens this year. But it's been a very up and down year, a very up and down era for Bulls basketball. Successful, objectively, yes, because they made a lot of postseason runs. They're a perennial playoff team, so you can't take that away from them. They have plenty of conference finals experience. And, they made some shuffles along the way. I'm not going to detail all those, but just know that this team has had lots of ups and downs. And they're still in their prime, technically. I said prime. It's still in their prime, technically. Anderson Moncrief is only 27. He's been in the league 8 years. Ellis is only 26, despite being in the league for 9 years. He came in as a high schooler. Quinn is only 31. Baxter, yes, he's 36. Baxter is 32, yes. And then Bosh is 36. So, those two are a little bit older. And their bench is kind of old. But, they've got a decent little team, honestly. And we will see how they fare against the Toronto Raptors. I think it's a pretty good matchup for them. I think they do have a little bit more star power than the Raptors, because they picked up Howard Baxter from San Antonio. Because as you can see, he's a perennial 26 a game type of guy, but he has never made an All-Star team though. And so that kind of shows you what this league is about. That shows you how high of scoring this league is. Let me show you like the statistics, because when I say 26 a game every year, that seems like a perennial All-Star. But no, look at this shit. Number 1 scorer was Louis Booker this year, who with 36 points a game. Yes. And look how many 30-point per game seasons there are. Look at this. Dan Hardaway averaged 30.1 points per game, and he is the 21st highest scorer in the league. 21st with 30.1 points a game. Like that shows you how much scoring this league has. How just absurd, like especially compared to nowadays. Look how many players are in the 29s. Reggie Nash averaged 29 points a game for Portland, and he's the 30th highest scorer. So between 30.1 at 21 and then 29.2 at 30, there's like 7 or 8 players here. Like, that's how closely contested it is. That just shows you. Like, can you imagine a league like this where even a 0.3% point per game difference is huge in terms of NBA and all that, because you're splitting hairs. Like, everyone is so good. How do you determine who's an all-star, who's not? And so, unfortunately, Howard Baxter has never made an all-star team, and he never will. But he's an all-star caliber type of guy. Puts up a lot of points, very efficient. But, you know, he's been struggling in this playoffs. You know, I don't know, man. But, you know, I think this team has some potential. I don't want to go into the Raptors just yet. I think I'll do that next episode. But the next game that we have coming up is Mavericks at Thunder. This is a very interesting series. I think I've talked about them a little bit. But, yeah, as far as the Bulls versus Raptors, they're up 2-0. And I think that they have a good chance of winning, but we'll see. All right. And so if there's any questions you guys have about this Bulls roster and you guys want to check them out a little bit more and see their playoff runs, I can put the screenshots on the screen and all that. But, yeah, that's going to be it for this episode. This is a little bit of a breakdown into the Bulls background, and I hope you guys enjoy it. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace.